They are damaging the brand of our flagship universities.
Tonight, terminating tenure, why some Texas lawmakers want to end permanent job security for public university professors. Plus, will librarians be targeted? A new campaign aims to hold librarians accountable for so-called obscene books. And later, legislative leverage.
To get a seat at the table and have a little bit better say.
How one of the state's top Democrats plans to use GOP priorities to push his party's agenda. Capitol Tonight starts right now. Thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. Texas lawmakers are considering ending permanent job security for new Texas professors. It's a priority of the lieutenant governor, and the issue is gaining traction among Republicans in several states. Lawmakers in at least 6 other states have considered similar bills to ban future tenure at public universities. Florida became the first to pass such a bill last year. Our Charlotte Scott reports on why Republicans are pushing this and why others say it could hurt public universities in Texas.
Texas universities can grant tenure to professors who have a good track record of teaching and research. The status is intended to create job security and provide academic freedom for university faculty. But a bill filed by Houston area Senator Brandon Creighton would prevent public universities from granting any type of permanent employment. The bill says a university's board of regents could instead establish a system of tiered employment so long as there are annual performance evaluations.
We've seen some professors that are pretty radical in nature. They are damaging the brand of our flagship universities and our other public universities under the guise of that protection.
In the past, there's been arguments against tenure because faculty members might check out if they know they have job security. One political science professor says Senator Creighton's argument against tenure this session has more to do with politics.
To suggest that people's job security would be affected by ideological considerations, by the potential that they would be judged, too far left or too far right, is, I think, really kind of chilling when we think about free speech and intellectual freedom on college campuses.
Senator Creighton's bill would only affect public institutions, not private ones like Southern Methodist University and Texas Christian University in the DFW area.
If Texas unilaterally handicaps itself in faculty recruitment in this way, that could have very real consequences on the quality of faculty that would be at Texas public institutions.
Senator Morgan LaMantia, who represents South Padre Island, is on the Education Committee with Senator Creighton. She doesn't want to see tenure come to an end. She argues that college students are adults who want to learn about perspectives that might be different from their own. And she says public universities can still terminate faculty members who've been granted permanent employment.
If an administrator feels that a professor is teaching something that is not correct or not in line or even too radical for the school, they do have the ability to terminate those professors. So removing tenure does not alleviate that issue.
If the bill passes, university faculty members who already have tenure would be able to keep it. It would just prevent future tenure from being granted. For Capitol Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
Charlotte, thank you. And joining us now to discuss this further is Michael Harris. He's also a professor at Southern Methodist University, where he directs the higher education program and is department chair of education policy and leadership. Professor Harris, thanks for being on the program. Nice to see you. We were just hearing from your colleague there at SMU, and I know that it's a private institution, so this wouldn't affect you. But how do you think ending tenure at some of these public institutions would affect higher education?
Well, I think quite simply, if you were to implement this, you would cripple public higher education in the state of Texas almost overnight. And I'm not saying that to be alarmist or just because I'm a faculty member. You would not have the ability to recruit top quality faculty to the university. And not only that, your faculty that are already there, I guarantee you, the Ivy League, the University of California, the University of Illinois, these states will be looking to come and steal the best faculty from the University of Texas and from Texas A&M. So this would have profound implications for the ability to have the best and brightest faculty teaching the best and brightest students in our state.
For some who might not know, what does it mean? What does it take to earn tenure status?
So I have to tell you, it is the hardest thing I've ever done professionally in my life. It is a 6 to 7 year interview. It takes an entire 6 to 7 years to go through the process. And even when you put in your materials, it takes a year to go through all of the various levels of review. Faculty at your institution review, faculty from across the country review, there's student feedback. It's an incredibly rigorous process. And then you might think, oh, you've got tenure, now you can do whatever you want. That's not true either. Almost every university on either an annual basis or a semi-annual basis has a process where you go through additional reviews, even as a tenured faculty member. And as was noted in the piece, faculty can still be fired with tenure. All tenure guarantees is you have a due process that you have to go through, but it is an incredibly rigorous interview process.
Yeah, I mean, how hard is it to terminate if you do have tenure? We were hearing from the senator there who was mentioning that as well, that is still an option. How difficult is that?
It's difficult, but I would say it is difficult for a good reason. Without having these due process things in place, you can have instances where politicians, legislators, university leaders could summarily dismiss faculty. So all you do is set a bar and a process you have to go through. If faculty are not performing or they're doing things that are considered inappropriate by faculty, colleagues, university leadership, you can remove a tenured faculty member. But there's a high bar for a reason. You need to protect scholarship and teaching in order to ensure that higher education can serve the state. And that's what tenure does.
Yeah, you've been speaking to this a little bit, but what do you think ending tenure would mean for students, and how could this affect them?
So students learn best from faculty who are experts, faculty who ask tough questions, and faculty who can challenge those in power. All things that tenure protects. So if you were to take those things away, it is really difficult to imagine students getting the best education, the education that they get today, and that we want them to be our leaders and for future generations. So it is profoundly influential in the classroom. And if you don't have the best faculty, you're not going to have the best students. We're going to lose them to other states. This is a really, really critical thing that could cripple higher education in the state of Texas.
I want to switch gears real quickly with you, but as an expert in higher education, Republicans are also looking to prohibit diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, offices and hiring, in training. They say it should only be based on merit. I mean, what do you think this would mean for schools?
So I think there's two components here. So number one, this is a pretty slippery slope argument. So if we're going to ban discussions of critical race theory, for example, which isn't covered in every class and every university class at all. But if you're going to start to do this, are we going to start censoring people who are searching for cures for cancer, looking for new energy sources? This has a chilling effect. But I think also we have to understand we need higher education to train future leaders in the state. And higher education needs to look like the state in order to do that. And that's why these kind of initiatives are important.
Michael Harris, we will have to leave it there. We'll get you back on. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the Senate Education Committee took up the controversial issue of so-called school choice today. Nearly 400 people signed up to testify, and the hearing is still going. The chamber's main bill would give families up to $8,000 per student in taxpayer money to pay for private schooling through an education savings account. Public school advocates worry a voucher program will draw students away from public schools and essentially cause a drop in funding. But even some school choice proponents are frustrated the measure as it stands now only applies to students currently enrolled in public schools. The bill's author addressed that.
We have to start somewhere, and there's scarcity of dollars, and we're not as much excluding them. We're just saying we've got to build infrastructure that makes sense for the public school system to digest, and at the same time give our parents and our families the rights they deserve.
The legislation will likely pass the Senate, but faces an uncertain future in the House, which has historically voted against vouchers. Librarians are in the crosshairs of lawmakers who want to ban certain books from school and public libraries. So far this session, lawmakers have proposed a dozen bills that would change state law to make it easier to prosecute librarians for making obscene books available. This includes removing a legal exception for offensive materials given to minors if it has scientific or educational value. The Texas Senate unanimously signed off on its $16.5 billion property tax cut proposal today. It would pump billions of state dollars into public schools and give bigger tax breaks for homeowners and business owners. On the House side, their $17 billion plan passed out of committee this week. The chambers differ on their approaches to provide property tax relief and will ultimately have to come to some kind of a consensus. Turning now to the Texas border, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was in El Paso today for closed-door meetings with the DHS workforce. His visit comes amid criticism from Texas Republican lawmakers who blame him and President Biden for recent surges in migrant encounters. But as the president pushes more restrictive border control measures, even Democrats are frustrated. Our Adolfo Muniz spoke with several asylum seekers.
Cosme is a 56-year-old migrant from Nicaragua waiting for a chance to request asylum in Reynosa, Mexico. Despite of being surrounded by hundreds of other migrants, he feels alone with a deep pain in his heart.
No puedo regresar a mi país porque la situación que nos encontramos es muy dura.
What hangs in the balance for him is not just wanting a better life. It's about life itself, period. If deported back to Nicaragua, the penalty for having left is unthinkable.
Nos matan, nos echan presos por traición a la patria y vamos 40 años detenidos por no estar de acuerdo con la política del país.
Michael is from Venezuela. He's almost in the same situation. Here he says he makes more money than he ever could over there. But that's not the reason why. They are both escaping political oppression.
Quieren tenernos obligados ya en Venezuela, pasando necesidad como está pasando el país. El que sale por traición a la patria, si lo deportan uno para Venezuela otra vez.
But Nicaraguans have it far worse, says Cosme. Here, having to eat with his bare hands is preferable to the hell that awaits him if he's sent back home. And Nicaraguans are living in record numbers. More than 180,000 last year, according to Customs and Border Protection, 60 times more than the year before that. And leaving their country is not so simple.
Tenés que salir por medio del monte, porque si ya estás fichado por el Frente Sandinista, lo que agarran y te hacen desaparecer ahí en la montaña.
Con miedo, porque no sale con miedo. Pero para adelante. Nombre de Dios.
And with all this, there's for them another reason for fear, as the Biden administration wants to place even more restrictions on asylum.
And that was Adolfo Muniz reporting. Still to come on Capitol tonight, rolling the dice on gambling. State lawmakers make the case for bringing casinos and legalizing sports betting in Texas. And later, how a top Texas Democrat is trying to leverage GOP bills to his party's advantage. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Let's get a check now of some of the other political stories making headlines across Texas. Attorney General Ken Paxton's office says the whistleblowers who sued the agency should have known it could take years for lawmakers to approve their more than $3 million settlement. Attorneys for the whistleblowers recently said they'd return to court if the agency would not agree to secure the money during the current legislative session. Some key lawmakers don't want taxpayers to foot the bill, which results from a lawsuit filed by the plaintiffs who accused Paxton of abuse of office. A House panel heard efforts today to expand gambling in the state. Several proposed bills and resolutions would allow for destination casinos in Texas or legalizing mobile sports betting. Opponents worry about a potential rise in gambling addiction. All gambling bills are constitutional amendments that ultimately require voter approval. And the leader of the Texas House Democrats wants to leverage legalized gambling, property tax cuts, and other GOP-backed bills to advance their own agenda this year. That's according to a strategy memo from Chairman Trey Martinez Fischer. He picked bills that need Democrats' votes to pass because each requires two-thirds support. And with us now to discuss this strategy further is Representative Martinez Fischer of San Antonio. Chairman, welcome back to the program. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. What is the state of play here? Why do you think this plan will, or you're in a position to really do this?
Well, look, you know the legislature, everything is a negotiation, everything is about compromise, but what's really different this session is, at least in the House, the leadership has chosen a path to pass a number of priorities with a two-thirds vote requirement, and that's mostly due to how they want to spend money in the budget. And so that's really an opportunity for Democrats to get a seat at the table and have a little bit better say. And so, look, let's be pragmatic. There's some proposals that have pretty good ideas. And in those instances, we want to make them better. And then on the other hand, there may be some really concerning pieces of legislation that we'd like to have a little bit more say and have some leverage, have the ability to negotiate better outcomes. And I think we should use this opportunity to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, what do Democrats want in return? What is the agenda here?
Well, let's take the obvious. We've been working really hard on public education. There's a proposal from Republicans now that say, let's spend $5 billion to make education better in this state. Nobody agrees with that number if you're tracking inflation. Our Democratic plan costs $15 billion. And so there's a $10 billion gap there. So let's negotiate that. What does that mean? That's a $10,000 pay raise for teachers. That is putting money in the classroom that keeps up with the cost of inflation. That tells our retirees that we're going to keep our promise. You work hard, you do right. We're going to have a benefit for you that has a cost of living adjustment. And so we start having these conversations. If we can move that bill north of $5 billion, and we're doing our jobs. And then, of course, there's some bills we don't agree with. There's a lot of sort of this red meat and vitriol and things that obviously come into play here in the legislature. But we should be using our leverage to say we want to minimize those fights. It doesn't help the chamber. It doesn't help us move in a bipartisan, pragmatic way. And we have much to do than to get distracted with social issues when we have so much need with our budget and our our state economy.
Sure. How concerned are you that this could backfire? I mean, in terms of just having the strategy out there and people being aware of it now, Republicans being aware of it now?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Look, this isn't a secret. I think anybody who has served one term in the legislature, they see a proposal that says HJR on there, they know that's 100 votes.
Yeah.
And so I've communicated this very clearly to House leadership, to chairs of committees, authors of bills. I've told our Democrats as well, like, let's look for these opportunities. I know that we can just let this moment pass by. Well, why would we? We can get better outcomes. And listen, this is a building, we sort of lose this thought, but this notion of coming together and finding compromise and negotiation, that's not a bad thing.
Sure.
What makes negotiations a good thing is when you can have a little bit of leverage, and that's what this is.
Chairman, we just have about a minute left, but I do want to ask you, because you solely addressed gambling in another memo, expanded gambling, warning your members the legislation would benefit Republicans because they get more campaign contributions from a big casino operator. That has rubbed some people the wrong way that we've talked to, that say that you shouldn't mention votes and campaign contributions in the same memo or in the same sentence. What's your response to that?
I've been here 11 terms, and I can tell you throughout the 90s, it was about denying trial lawyers legislation because they helped Democrats get elected. I was here in the 2000s when there have been attacks on labor unions and teacher groups to not pass their legislation because all they do is help Democrats. If you don't know anything about politics when you're in this building, you should probably find another line of work. I think it's very inappropriate to do this kind of transacting, but to just report facts, let people know this is the state of play. I want you to know this for your awareness. That's all that memo intended to do. And frankly, everybody needs to know where they stand. I think it's important that we have all the facts. We're not asking members to do anything they don't want to do. We just want them to be aware of who is in the building, what they're asking for, and what they've been up to.
Chairman Trey Martinez Fischer, we'll have to leave it there. We'll get you back on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Karina.
And still to come on Capitol tonight, a double bank closure isn't stopping the Federal Reserve from raising interest rates. How the latest hike could affect your wallet. Welcome back. A Manhattan grand jury hearing evidence in the hush money case against former President Donald Trump is not expected to vote on a possible indictment this week. They are expected to meet tomorrow, but are still unlikely to come to a decision. The case is about payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels just before the 2016 election to allegedly keep her quiet about an affair she claims she had with Trump. Trump denies the affair and all wrongdoing. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates today, just days after the fallout from 2 U.S. bank failures. Economists expected the hike to be low as the financial market continues to stabilize. Mike Valerio has the latest on today's announcement and what this means for consumers.
The U.S. Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 25 basis points Wednesday. It comes just 10 days after the Biden administration took emergency actions to stifle the fallout from 2 bank failures.
History has shown that isolated banking problems, if left unaddressed, can undermine confidence in healthy banks and threaten the ability of the banking system as a whole.
While at the same time, inflation continued to show signs of easing last month.
They're between a rock and a hard place. They're very concerned if they don't do enough, it'll look like they're not fighting inflation, which has consequences. If they do too much and affect the economy too much when banks are a little bit rocky, they could cause a little more trouble in confidence in the banking system.
Since last March, the Fed has pushed interest rates higher to make borrowing more expensive and cool spending. Annual inflation was down to 6% in February from a 40-year high of 9.1% last June. The Fed's target inflation rate is 2%. The labor market remains strong, keeping labor costs high for companies. Potential future Fed rate increases will continue to push borrowing costs and purchase prices higher for consumers.
Inflation remains too high, and the labor market continues to be very tight. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
A U.S. Senate committee is looking for ways to improve rail safety after recent toxic train derailments in Ohio. In a hearing today, lawmakers focused on preventing future derailments and improving safety for trains carrying hazardous materials. Some of the waste from the Ohio crash was later taken to a plant near Houston for disposal. Texas does have more railroad miles than any other state. And that is all the time that we have tonight. We're back again tomorrow with the latest in Texas politics. Until then, thanks for watching. Stay safe and have a great night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel, and for more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button right over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app to get live news coverage, weather alerts, and more wherever you are. And don't forget to tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV for live local reporting every single day. We'll see you then.